Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. We're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e and we're talking about monster tactics for the will-o-wisp. The will-o-wisp. It's an odd creature, this will-o-wisp. In fact, one of the problems I have with the monster manual, the Dungeons & Dragons 5e monster manual, is the will-o-wisp is not exactly the same thing I remember in previous versions of the game, and I highly recommend going and watching AJ Pickett's video. He does monster ecology and he does discuss will-o-wisp and how it sort of functions. And I remember watching, I believe it was an old movie about leprechauns and banshees and being drawn and lured into swamp areas and nasty bogs and stuff like this. And the will-o-wisp is the one that sort of stood out for me. It's one of those unusual monsters that really isn't a combat monster. It's more of an ambush creature. And on top of that, it's very, very peculiar in the way that it sort of functions. And what they've gone and done with Dungeons & Dragons 5e is they've turned it into an undead creature. It used to be a fey creature, and now it's apparently a very small, tiny, undead creature. I'm going to forgive Wizards of the Coast for doing such a thing, but we will move on and start discussing the will-o-wisp. So the will-o-wisp is a malevolent soul from evil beings that have perished in misery. And this is what apparently the new version of the will-o-wisp is. So if you please turn to page 301 of the Monster Manual, it gives you details on the will-o-wisp, and it gives you the stat block. Now I'm going to break that down into pieces. Starting off with the most obvious thing is, where do you find these strange and peculiar creatures? These unusual undead. They are found to thrive in forsaken lands, in swampy, boggy, foggy areas, sorrowful battlefields, places where great battles have taken place and many people have died, or many elves or dwarves or creatures have perished, and there's just a feeling of misery in that location. They are trapped in the place of their death, so they can't really leave it. They can't sort of leave and go somewhere else. They don't journey around. It doesn't sort of function like that. They are agents of evil that form a sort of symbiotic relationship with other creatures such as hags, oni, black dragons, and possibly even cultists, although they've got to be careful. All of these creatures, the hags, the oni, black dragons, and cultists, if they get themselves into a situation where they are near death, a will-o-wisp would take advantage of that if they thought they could get away with it. And it's not a particularly stupid creature. They've got a reasonable intelligence and quite a decent wisdom. So they are smart enough to know when they can capitalize on somebody's misfortune. So the will-o-wisp could also prey on one of the victims of a more powerful undead or other types of undead. So somebody walks into a location and it has a battle with some undead and they're significantly reduced in strength, then a will-o-wisp might then appear, make itself known, and then try to consume the life, or at least shock their victim, and then consume its life once it's in a vulnerable position. This is how the will-o-wisp functions. So what do you do with the will-o-wisp? One of the things I find rather peculiar about the will-o-wisp is that a lot of people still seem to view it as a straight up frontline fighter, and it's not really that sort of monster. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. This is the sort of, yes, I do have a little will-o-wisp miniature. In fact, I have two, but I'm putting one out for now. The will-o-wisp lures its unwary victims into things like quicksand or quicksand pits. Now, quicksand won't kill you outright. Normal quicksand actually will only draw you down so far. You're moving around sort of, they're actually not going to probably suck you all the way down. But you will be trapped, restrained, vulnerable to attack, and that is when a will-o-wisp would capitalize on it. Or they might draw the victim into a monster's lair, or a trap that somebody else has set or created, or some other natural hazard that has been created from maybe the bog or from a forest area, or anything that they can utilize. Foggy area, anything that would have maybe projecting rocks, things like that. And then once their prey has fallen victim to this horrible location that they have been lured to, then they are going to feed on their prey, on their pain, or just capitalize on the fact that they have much reduced hit points and cause them as much suffering as possible. They are often mistaken for a lantern light that might be being carried by somebody in the distance. So you'll often come across these at night, and I think the best time to use them is when there isn't a lot of light. They have a very good dark vision. Their dark vision is like 120 feet, so they can see a long way, whereas normal characters and creatures only have about 60 feet dark vision, so their vision is very limited compared to something like the will-o-wisp. They are also mistaken for something like a campfire. So maybe it's a set location and they just stay there, and because they illuminate themselves, okay, they have variable illumination. It allows them to shed bright light in a certain distance, but when you think about a bright light, you're still going to see it from quite a long way away when it's dark, because there's no other light being shown, so obviously they're going to stand out in a dark location. Okay, so we've kind of set the background and how they sort of are, and what they are and how they function a little bit. So now it's time to start talking about how you would use them in your game. The will-o-wisp is a very complex monster to run, and it tends to be treated, as I said, as a frontline fighter, which it isn't. So I'm going to show you how to use it in a way that isn't going to be a frontline fighter. There is no way to actually trap the will-o-wisp, and this is due to the fact that it has incorporeal movement. So even if you were to come up to something like this, it can move through the creature. It can move through obstacles simply because of its incorporeal movement ability. Now, obviously, it's not going to stop in something that's solid, because it would take damage, and it's not an awful lot of damage, but it's still some damage, and it unfortunately doesn't have resistance to force damage, so it's not going to be wanting to do that. So, can't trap it. Once a will-o-wisp is injured, though, should anybody ever manage to strike it, or it allows itself to be engaged in combat, which I don't think you should actually do at all, it is going to probably go and turn invisible. You can use an action to make it go invisible, and a will-o-wisp has got it all the time in the world. So invisible and flee, or move away. You can't strike something that you can't see with an attack of opportunity. And really you're guessing as to where that will-o-wisp is. Once it goes invisible, it's then going to move. And that is the key to using the will-o-wisp when you need to actually move it out of combat. Make it go invisible and move. There's nothing to pick up. It's not like it stands on anything. It flies 50 feet. It can just fly 50 feet straight up. And there's not an awful lot that the players can do about that. And that is probably the best way to deal with them. Straight up once they're invisible, and they're no longer going to be vulnerable to your players' characters. Okay, will-o-wisp is very smart, as I've already pointed out, high intelligence, high wisdom. They're smart enough to lure their prey into traps and cause their victims all sorts of grief, which means they're also smart enough to realize that they don't have to stick around in a fight. So as soon as they take damage, this is the time when the will-o-wisp is going to probably take off. It can wait. It can just stay invisible and just follow their victim until they get into a bad situation. But what they can't do is leave the location that they are bound to. Remember, they are trapped in a particular place and location, so they don't go very far. You could also lure your party or an individual from the party into a pack of will-o-wisps. So if you have more than one, and I've only got 2 here, but I would suggest if you're going to lure your party into a group of will-o-wisps, then make sure you have at least as many as the party, if not more. As I said, they don't fight to the death. There's absolutely no need for them to. They're undead. Man, I'm really struggling with the concept of the will-o-wisp being an undead. It just doesn't feel right at all. But it has all the time in the world, as I said. And this is the normal process for dealing with the will-o-wisp. Let's move them off. The party will follow the will-o-wisp. Once it gets into a bad situation, whether they get ambushed by, I don't know, what is this? This is a Shambling Mount. Okay, a battle of a Shambling Mount is bad. Once somebody starts going down in this battle, and I'm just going to turn things around a little bit. Once somebody goes down, this is when a will-o-wisp will make itself visible again and try to feed on that victim. Remember, the consume life bonus action, will-o-wisp can target one creature it can see within 5 feet if it has 0 hit points. Now, what I would do is I would go with the shock, which is action, and consume life, or even better, if they're already on 0 hit points and they're already down, then you can use your bonus action. You're going to become visible. As soon as you use your consume life, you become visible, and once you've done that, you suck out their life, you regain hit points, and of course they've got to make a constitution saving throw. Otherwise, unfortunately, going to wind up very, very dead. And then you can use your action to go invisible again and move to a different location. It's a horrible monster to deal with. Just imagine that. You get into into trouble. This thing appears, makes itself visible, uses its consume life, and then once it's consumed the life, it then flashes out of visibility, going invisible, and moves away. And of course, it can go straight up in the air if it really wanted to. And there's not an awful lot you can do about that because most players won't figure that one out. So a horrible monster to deal with. And anything from the Shambling Mound to owlbears or something like that, all of those are certainly options. Luring the party or one of the individuals from the party into a group of will-o-wisps. I don't like that strategy myself, but those are the things that I would suggest. So you can see what I mean. It's not the sort of monster that just goes out and starts shocking somebody. It's not like you go and you're going to go, oh, my first action is I'm going to become visible and I'm going to shock my target. Usually the shock is only if they can tell that there's already pain and anguish occurring and that the victim might be ready to cark it so that they can consume that life. So that is really how I would run the will-o-wisp. And hopefully that has been helpful to you in some way. What page is it on? It is on page 301 of the Monster Manual, Aaron. Yep. So hopefully you found this useful in some way. So I'm going to state it again. I highly recommend that you don't use your will-o-wisp as a frontline combat monster. That you use it in conjunction with some other monster or hazard, okay, where the party have to contend with maybe it's an owlbear lair or there are owlbears in the location, and this is when you can have more than one will-o-wisp. You could have 2, you could have 3, it's up to you. And then once somebody starts going down, this is when the will-o-wisp makes itself known, appears and capitalizes on somebody else's misfortune. So that is how I would run the monster myself. If you found this useful or informative or helpful in any way, please share and like the video. If you found this content interesting and you're hoping to see more content like this, then I do videos like this all the time. I do a video simply, every day there's usually a live stream or a published video. I have about 500 videos. So hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish a new video. If you want to support my channel, hey, you supported my channel right now watching this video. And if you found it useful, that's excellent. I'm really, really happy to hear that. I don't do Patreon, but down in the description, you're going to find an affiliate link. Usually it's for Amazon and the book depository, and you can buy stuff online if you do that sort of thing. I get a small commission for anything you buy. You pay exactly the same price. And the link that you go through, you don't even have to buy the thing that I've linked to. You can go through that link and then buy something else, and I'll still get some commission for that. So really helpful to me, and I do appreciate it when people buy stuff online. Okay, so that's covered everything. If you have questions, and I see that there are some comments that I need to address in the chat box, so start asking your questions, giving your feedback, and we'll have a discussion. Remember, this is a reference. There isn't an awful lot on how to run monsters for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and so this is just the beginning of building that reservoir, that reference for other people to use. If you have questions and feedback that you would like to give, something you would like to add because maybe I missed something, and it's entirely possible that I did, then you can put that down in the comments section once the live stream is published by YouTube. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Right there. There it is. Keep rolling those 20s.